Genesis chapter 11. Genesis chapter 11 here tells of an event. Now think about this. This is the introduction to chapter 11 I'm going to give you first before we actually get into it. But I want you to think about this. Genesis chapter 11 tells of an event of almost equal importance to that of Noah's flood. Because according to what's going on here in the first 10 verses, 9, is a catastrophic event. And it changed, it didn't kill anybody or destroy anybody, but it changed everyone. And it was an event that somebody was actually named. Peleg was named because of this incident. It was a very catastrophic event. And catastrophic means it was of great importance. Nobody died from it or anything like that. But now the flood was worldwide in its effects. I mean, billions of people died on the planet. But the confusion of tongues had worldwide impact. And it happened in I don't know how long of a period of time, but it looks like it was something that God did all of a sudden. To the point that all God wanted to do was to scatter them. So when God confused the languages, automatically they had to seek out people that could understand them in their language, which is an amazing thing. Because the people they were working with here didn't understand each other. So this had a worldwide impact on them, but the world at that time was of one unity. They didn't want to scatter, and we're going to see that. And so you can be sure that Satan here in this chapter, although he's not around, he's not mentioned, you can see that he's 100% behind the scenes, working, because of the evil that's going on here. Now, he's been behind the scenes since chapter 11, since they came out of the flood. He's had Ham, and he's been using Canaan. He's been moving Canaan into places he's out of bounds. Ham has been out of bounds. Satan is at work through chapters 9, 10, and 11, and we've covered that in depth. He has pressed his advantage any way he could, gained when he capitalized so effectively on the weaknesses of Ham's character, Nimrod's character, Canaan's character. I mean, he is doing a work here that nobody ever talks about. And Satan has gained the allegiance of the Hamites in general, and of Nimrod in particular, up to this point. Romans chapter 1, verses 18 to 32, and we're not going to turn there tonight, but geographically, Romans 1 describes the resulting moral and spiritual deterioration of Nimrod and his followers. Willfully leaving the knowledge and worship of the Creator, they began to worship the creation or the creature over the Creator. That's what it says in Romans 1. And this has led to pantheism and polytheism and idolatry. Now, how much of this new system of religion came by direct communication with Satan? We don't know. But there had to have been some, no doubt. Because look where Nimrod is headed. Look what Ham has done. And look where Canaan, what he's producing. Behind the facade of the images of men and birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things lurked a real host of the heavens, the angelic and demonic hosts of Lucifer. They're present here somewhere. The main thrust of the work of Satan and his hosts has always been that of deception. He is the one in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, which deceiveth the whole world. He is called the accuser of the brethren. And you know, whenever there's a rebellion, Satan's behind the rebellion. And Nimrod means rebel. And so Satan's the one that's deceived the whole world into worshiping something or someone other than the true God of creation. The development of this system of idolatry and Satan worship was accompanied by an attempt to unify all mankind under a one world government. God wanted a theocracy as given to Noah by God. Satan, see, doesn't want a theocracy. He wants an absolute dictatorship, and Nimrod has been chosen to be the rebel. He's been chosen by Satan to lead this dictatorship. Now, God gave the institution of human government, but Nimrod's government is obey me or I'll cut your head off. Absolute dictatorship. Now, when you look at Nebuchadnezzar, he's the same way. You don't bow down to me, I'm going to throw you into the furnace of fire. Right? Absolute dictatorship. By the way, that's what the Antichrist will do. You'll take the mark of the beast or I'll cut your head off. Absolute dictatorship. They don't want a theocracy. What? All believe in one God. No. But Nimrod not only set up a military dictatorship, but also established a priestly oligarchy in which he himself was the chief priest and later the chief object of worship. Every religion in the world worships Nimrod under the form of Baal or Bel or something else, and we've covered that in detail. Every nation on earth. Now, God commanded Noah in chapter 9, verse 1 to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. In order for this to be accomplished, God ordained human government. This was to be implemented through dividing the population into workable and controllable social units or nations. Social units are the nations that we're talking about. That's what God wanted. But God wanted them to scatter out and multiply and fill up the whole earth. That's what he wanted to do. But you find here in chapter 11, they don't want to be scattered. In fact, that's their biggest fear in verse 3 or 4. Verse 3 and 4. They don't want to be scattered. But Satan wanted everyone united under controlled dictatorship. Why? So Satan can control the population. Doesn't that sound familiar today? Because our nation is heading toward that. What? For the World Economic Forum to take control of everything and to take control of your lands and your property, and you'll be happier about it. See, it's all heading to the same thing that Nimrod set up. So mankind refused to submit willingly to God's arrangement, so God had to bring it about by special intervention. He had to come down and confuse the languages and scatter them. As man began to multiply, they preferred to live together in one unit instead of separating into many units, which is what God wanted. Now going step by step from the beginning, it started with Noah and his incident with his drunkenness. It all started right then and there. His sons were producing children. Canaan, obviously, was the youngest son of Ham. That incident could have been, now notice, in Genesis chapter 10, Canaan is the youngest son of Ham. So when the incident with Noah being drunk and uncovered in his tent, and Ham walking in on his father asleep naked, and Canaan was there and Noah cursed Canaan, you know how many years that could have been after the flood? It didn't happen immediately. No, it happened years after. Canaan was already old enough, who might have been influenced by that, and could have been old enough to have taken part in it, as we've alluded to before. And because Ham is involved, and Canaan, his father's Ham. Well, don't the children, if the father thinks it's okay, won't they follow the father? Yeah. Yep. And so that's the reason Canaan went through all the land of Canaan and started producing giants again. And so, now this incident could have been as much as 7 to 10 years after the flood. If you take each of his sons and you put at least 2 years in between. Maybe 2 years before, actually. Because remember, Shem has his firstborn 2 years after the flood. That's what it says in, chapter 11 here? Verse 10, these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. So in order for Canaan if there was 2 years in between, it could have been anywhere from 8 to 10 years after the flood that Canaan was born. And then you've got to add the years that Canaan became old enough where he could be cursed by Noah. So it could have been even longer than 10 years. And so once they produced children, then the Bible talks about Genesis 10, that they were divided in their nations. And so chapter 11 is between the time where they were multiplying and the time before they became divided. And so just like so many times in our Bible, and we're going to see it again in the future, in 1 Samuel actually, there's another story that happens before another chapter. You know, chapter 17 happens before chapter 16 of 1 Samuel. We're going to prove it. Because chapter 17 wouldn't be there. Because at the end of chapter 16, Saul has an evil spirit come on him. And you know what they do? They bring David in to play for him. And all of a sudden in chapter 17, Saul doesn't even know who David is. So that means that chapter 17 had to have happened chronologically before chapter 16. And so here we have chapter 11 of Genesis that happens in between 9 and 10 somewhere. And we've already seen that actually in 1 Samuel, a story about Saul and Nahash the Ammonite. And it's all to point toward a specific thing, so you know why God put the language barrier, and how he divided the land, he has to do that. And so chapter 11 is here in between chapters 9 and 10 because something happened where he had to divide the nations, and then he divided the people's tongues too. And so again, chapter 11 is between the time when they were multiplying and the time before they became divided. Now, what happened in between? Well, there's a lot of interesting things that happened in between, actually. Things that you're going to be very interested about. But if the sons were producing children, but they haven't scattered yet, and the Tower of Babel hasn't been built yet, then that means that they're all together as one nation, brother with brother with brother, and with their genealogies maybe even intermarrying and intermingling at that time. And we've seen a lot of that in chapter 10. Now verse 1. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. So the whole earth consisted of Noah's sons and their sons, and possibly great-grandsons. That's what it's consisting of. And they had one language and one speech. Now, the language, it says it was of one language and of one speech, meaning the language and the speech were different. The one language is a written language. The speech is something that's spoken. So you have a written language and a spoken speech. Their speech was one and the same. But now, you say, well, they knew how to write? Yeah, they did. Because in Genesis chapter 5, remember, it says, the book of the generations of Adam. Meaning, there was a book about it that they kept track of. That means they had to know how to write, and they obviously knew how to speak, right? But it was all one language up until this point. But at this point in verse 1, everything's one. One language and one speech. That means the language was the written language, whatever, maybe Hebrew, probably, or a form of Hebrew. Okay? It obviously was not English. And then, now, this is all religious, and we're going to see this. This is religious and commercial unity. It's not spiritual and biblical unity, which is what the Antichrist will have in the tribulation again. It'll be a religious and commercial unity. There's nothing godly about it. There's nothing biblical about it. Now verse 2, and it came to pass. That phrase means there is a period of time that's happening. It means this is what's happened later on, or what's getting ready to happen. But more than that, it came to pass means that it really actually happened. It came to pass. In other words, it really happened. And so you have all these people talk about Genesis like, oh, it's just a myth. No, God said, and it came to pass. That means it actually happened. This is history written down. God gives it to you. Now, he says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Total integration here. The world hates integration. I mean, that's actually what they want, is integration. They don't want segregation. They actually hate segregation, not integration. Integration is what they want. Just accept everyone as they are, who they are, any race, and there's nothing wrong with that. But God wants them separated. That God's wanted that from the beginning. He said, multiply and replenish the earth. You have to, in order to fill the earth up or refill the earth up, you have to scatter. Man doesn't want to do that. And man is actually, your elitists and globalists want to put everybody together in one place so they can keep an eye on you. Because, Christian, you can't be trusted to obey government. Right? Why? You're a free thinker. You've got a free will of your own. But see, the globalists and elitists want to take your will. They want your will line up with theirs. And if you won't line up with it, they'll break your will and force you to be put in concentration camps or whatever. They're trying to do it again. But see, here, they're already integrated. They're already one nation. And verse 2, and it says, and they found a plane. You know that's the first mention of an airplane in the Bible? I'm kidding. An airplane, they found a plane in the land of Shinar? Boy, you guys are, woo. No, it's not. I'm teasing. But here the joke is, and you thought the Wright brothers were the first one to invent the airplane. Anyway, but see, they found a plane in the line of Shinar. Now Daniel chapter 3 actually tells you what the name of the plane is called. It's the plain of Dura. It says in Daniel chapter 3 verses 1 and 2, which is in the land of Shinar, but it's the plain of Dura. And so that's the name of the plain. But now notice here, it says, and as they journeyed from the east. From the east. All right, so now if you get your map out, maybe you've got one in the back of your Bible, but that's the east of Babylon. Okay, they're coming from the east, traveling west. All right, so if they're down here in Africa, and they're going this way, they're going east. But they are coming from the east. That means they're already way out here. You see that? Now, God deals heavily with directions. Directions is very important to God. And so, now, your critics like to say, oh, it means eastward. They're going eastward. No, God knows his directions. They're coming from the east. That means they are going west. If you're coming from the east of Montana, that means you're going west, right? And so that's very easy to understand. And so, but they're not coming from Palestine or Mount Ararat. Now see, they are east of Babylon, and Babylon is where Shinar is. And so it says here, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So they are east of Babylon, which is Shinar. So they're coming out of the lands east of Babylon, which is Persia and possibly India at this time. And so remember, India came your Koreans and everything like that. So, I mean, not all of them came out of India, obviously. But the ones that are settling in the land of Shinar, Hamites, Canaanites, are traveling eastward. And they settled in the land of Shinar. Now remember, Mount Ararat is in Turkey, and which is Armenia, right? Now obviously they traveled east from Ararat. But now, through some kind of, I don't know what was going on, but maybe trying to scatter a little bit, they turned back and they're coming from the east and wound up settling here in the land of Shinar. And so, now, in order for them to be eastward, now, let's see. Now, isn't Babylon like down here somewhere? Iraq? Yeah. And so, isn't it down here somewhere?
No, Iraq would be over there.
Over here? So that means they were over yonder coming this way, and they settled in Babylon. All right? Right? So I wasn't sure which side of that is. But now Armenia. Now if you follow the Mediterranean Sea, it goes up and around and it's way up there. So that means they had to travel south and go all the way and then turn back and come east to land in Iraq. Right? They had to go south, because here it says that they came from the east. So that means sooner or later they had to travel south a little bit and settle in places. But it doesn't say southwest or south or east. It just says east. So by this time, they're already east of Babylon and east of Shinar. Now, if you recall Genesis chapter 10, verse 10, Shinar is a location where Babylon and Babel is located. But while journeying and migrating, see, they're trying to stick together. They're trying to stay together as one unit. And so they did not want to be scattered abroad. Now, Persia is Iran today. All right, that's Persia, Iran. Babylon is Iraq. And so Shinar is west of Persia. Okay? And it says in Daniel chapter 3, verse 1, and they dwelt there in the land of Shinar in the plain of Dura, and which is in Iraq. Now remember that also Shinar is ancient Sumer. Remember we talked about that? It's ancient Sumer, where the Sumerians were. And actually it's the fertile Mesopotamian plain is where that's at. The leader of the population by this time would be Nimrod. Nimrod's the one that's leading them. Chapter 10, verse 10. Now verse 3. Genesis 11, look at verse 3. So they journeyed from the east. They found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick. Now, these words, go to, it's an old English phrase that is similar to come on. Like, come on, let's do this. Go to. And so it's very similar to that. But now notice what they're saying. Go to, come on. Let us make brick and burn them throughly. Now notice here, this is man-made materials. Let us make brick and burn them throughly, and they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. So these are man-made materials. Stone is God-made, but bricks are man-made. You have to make bricks. Now anybody that does a little bit of masonry knows that bricks have to be made. But stone, see, that's God's materials. And so the slime is like pitch. It's a tar, kind of. And instead they're using the slime instead of mortar. But they were going to use it as mortar, is what they're going to do. And that's what it says here. And it says, and slime had they for mortar. But the slime isn't mortar, but they're going to use it for mortar. That's the understanding in this verse. Now, if you look at the ark, Noah's ark, those were God-made materials. All right? And it says in Genesis there that it was pitch, that they pitched it within and without. Remember that? It doesn't say that here. See, these are man-made materials. So you're talking about God's materials for Noah's ark versus the materials used to make this city and this tower. Now, another thing about this, notice this civilization is worried about the here instead of the hereafter. They're worried about what's going on right now. They're interested in how things appear, so they imitate the real things. They get brick instead of rock or stone. It's an imitation. The slime that they're using, you know what this slime is? They're down in that area, in the Mesopotamian area, there was pits there that had slime in it. And it was tar. There was tar beds and stuff. And so that's where they're getting all this slime. That's where you also get your names for like pitch and tar is slime and stuff like that. And so it was a tarry substance is what this was. And so they don't have stone because guess what? They stayed in a plain. There's no stone there in order to make their cities. So they've got to make their own brick. And so there's a lot of artificial work of man here. And so working in perfect unity together, but notice they're hurrying to get something done quickly. Why? Look at verse 4. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. You know what they're scared of? Being scattered. So whatever they've got to do to get this city and tower up, they got to get it done quickly. Because they know it's inevitable that we're going to have to be scattered. Why? We're going to get too big for this area. It's inevitable for them to be scattered. So they're trying to hurry to get something done, but they're using artificial materials. Now you look around this area, and you look out all these places that are growing up, and you contractors can go in. You can say, "Oh, they messed that up. They messed that up." Why? Because they wanted to hurry up and get it up so they can charge someone rent. So they can start making money back off of it. And they don't do a great job, because a great job may take them twice as long. So they just put something up real fast so they can start making some money back. Well, that's what they're doing here. They're building it quickly because they're fearing, okay, something's going to happen where we're going to get scattered upon the face of the whole earth. So we got to get this thing going. We got to build this city quickly, and we got to build this tower. And see, that's the great 21st century spirit of man reaching upward to get into heaven without God. And everybody today wants to work their way to heaven. You know, instead of following the way God said to get there. You know, the spirit of man wants to get to heaven. But notice the technology. Now think about the technology they had to have to do this. Now they say go to. Now, this means that they've got to have an inner circle of some kind of leaders or a circle of a council of some kind to come up to make a decision. Look, this is what we need to do. And the first thing they think of, number one, is a government of some kind that had reached a decision concerning various courses of action, and now they're making a decision. Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. So the first decision here was to develop a brick-making industry with a kiln, baked clay bricks, and asphalt from nearby pits as mortar. They have to have some kind of industry to produce the bricks and the slime. And to change the slime so much as so they could build it and put it in between the bricks so that way it doesn't just crumple to the ground, right? They got to come up with that. Before they can build a city, before they can build a tower, they got to have some materials first. So they're starting to mine. They've got some kind of industry going, right? And this will enable them to plan and develop strong permanent buildings. If they can get this brick kiln. You know what this is a type of? You remember that furnace that Nebuchadnezzar built that he threw the 3 Hebrew children in? Where was that at? It was in the land of Shinar, in the plain of Dura. See the typology? Man never gets away from the patterns. They never change. They never learn anything from history. Now this thing comes out bad, just like that came out bad for Daniel's 3 Hebrew friends, and I don't know what Nebuchadnezzar did after that. Because he lost that ordeal. Because God stepped in. But notice here that these people had the knowledge to do this. To build a city and a tower, to build a brick building industry. Who taught them that? Who taught them to do that? Well, Granddaddy Ham. Ham taught him to do that. You know why? He helped build the ark. But Ham knew that they couldn't build the ark out of gopher wood. They couldn't build this city and tower out of gopher wood anymore. So they have to think a little bit differently in their construction and come up with some different kind of materials. That's similar. Nimrod obviously was the leader of these people. And him and his men, his rulers under him, sought to provide the opportunity for 2 courses of action. Number one, they needed a systematic colonization and development of the whole earth. They had to figure out a way that they could colonize the whole earth and still have one dictatorship to control all of it. A one-world government dictator, and Nimrod would be the leader of it. He'd be the dictator. Now notice, back in chapter 10, you remember Shem's son Asher? He settled in a separate location, remember that? But Nimrod quickly took over that area from Asher. Asher wanted nothing to do with it. But Nimrod, seeing what Asher did and built himself a Nineveh and Cali and Rezin and those places, what did Nimrod do? He went over and conquered that area. Second course of action. Establishment of a strong society that would be able to produce a civilization that is self-sufficient and capable of controlling the entire world. They would control all the resources, and they would control all the occupations. The government would put the people to work. Sound familiar? That's what our government's trying to do with us. Put us in one place. They want to control your lands, and they want you to work for them. That is communism and socialism. That's it, man. See, that's exactly what Nimrod and his followers, they're the ones that started that. That is Satan's mindset. And our government just thinks, oh, this is a new thing, or they're trying to bring it in because of another country or something. No, this thing's been around since Nimrod. Your elitists want to control your land and for you to be okay with it and to be happy about it. Nimrod was a globalist and he was the elitist at this time. A self-sufficient society integrated under a powerful and brilliant leader would no longer be dependent upon God. And remember what we said about Nimrod? Nimrod emancipated man from the fear of the Lord. What he wanted to do was divide man from God. He wanted to separate man from the Lord so that way man no longer fears God. Wrong division. Wrong way to do things. That's what Nimrod, you know what? That's your government today. That's what they're going to try to do. Eventually, they want to set you free from worshiping God. That's why it's so much geared toward you. Do what you want. Be your own person. Have control of you. Take control of your own life. Don't submit it to God, right? That's the underlying theme. If you're doing what you want to do, then they don't have to worry about you serving and worshiping God. A self-sufficient society integrated under an antichrist. And a society like that would no longer be dependent upon God. You wouldn't need the Lord. All you would need is the government. That's why nobody wants to work today. That's why you can't find people to work for you or work with you. You've got to do it alone. That was Nimrod's goal. That will be the Antichrist's goal. That is the goal of the World Economic Forum. That's your globalist's goal today. This slime was probably a tar material from the abundant asphalt pits in the Tigris and Euphrates Valley. That's where they got it. Archaeology has revealed that this type of brick and asphalt construction was very common in ancient Babylon. And it was common because of the materials that are in that location. And of the tar beds and everything like that that's down in there. Now, this whole narrative breathes an impending disaster waiting to happen. You see the integration. You see the globalist of their day, their goal here. And you see that the wrong kind of building materials are used. You see the wrong place to build. That's verses 2 and 3. And in verse 4, you find the wrong motive in building and the wrong attitude toward God. You find all four of those things in these 4 verses. And so the first decision is, go to, let us make brick. We've got to build a brick making industry. Second thing is, go to. Now that we have the brick building industry going, and we're starting to get materials to build a city, now let's build a city and a tower. So this council, or whatever it is, headed up by Nimrod, and the men underneath him among this council, and there's always a council. There's always a council. You have the Council of Nicaea, where the Nicene Creed came from. Catholic council. No good. No good council. And you're going to see in the same chapter a heavenly council. Because God said, go to. Let us go down and see what they're doing. God's council, which is the Father, the Son, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, right? Heavenly council. And so they reached a decision to, obviously, they're planning on staying permanently in the Babel Metroplex. If they're saying we're going to get ready, we're going to build a city and a tower, that means they're going to stay. They're not moving anywhere. They don't plan on scattering. They're building this thing so they don't have to scatter all over the face of the earth. It's so they can stay together. And so they're planning to stay. They erect a strong capital city with a great central tower, symbolizing its unity and centralizing its culture. They're going to make their own culture there. And if you don't like their culture, Nimrod's going to send his men out, and he's going to conquer every other culture that doesn't take on their culture. Sound familiar? See, this is old, nothing new. It's happening in our day and age. Now, the city is a commercial symbol. This is where you're going to buy and sell and trade, right? This is where the city comes in. But you know what the tower is? The tower is the religious symbol. It's a religious symbol. Now, who built the first city? You remember? In Genesis chapter 4? Cain. So here you have, once again, a city that is following after Cain's pattern. And remember, the first city in the Bible, which was Cain's city, bad connotation. What does God think about a city? It's bad. That's God's mindset on it. Here, another, you know, God's people, when they left Egypt, what did they dwell in? Tents. In a tabernacle. Camping out, man. It wasn't a city. You know, most people got messed up going to a city. You remember when Abraham went down into Egypt? He went to a city. He got messed up down there. Came out a little bit like the world. See that? What happened when he went to Abimelech and Gerar, the Philistines? He got messed up because there's a city there. What happened to Isaac when he went to Gerar, again, Abimelech? Philistines got messed up, man. What happened when Lot joined Sodom and Gomorrah, the city? There's nothing good about a city. Now, see, we don't think anything of it because, man, we live in a city. You go to Salt Lake City, you go to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, cities, man. Nothing good about those cities. New Orleans, nothing good about them. Full of sin. You get in a lot of trouble staying there. Well, you already know how many people get in trouble just in Kalispell. I wouldn't even know if you consider Kalispell a city, you know. But a lot of people get in trouble. Cain built the first city. And so cities always have a bad connotation in Scripture. You know what happened to Dinah? She wanted to see the people of the land. One of the biggest cities at that time was Shechem and Hamor's city. She got in trouble. And so cities always have a bad connotation in Scripture. Now, tower. You know, this is the first time the word tower occurs. Well, the law of first mention. What is it? It's something demonic. God has to come down and stop it. Anyone familiar with obelisks of Egypt? Totem poles? Skyscrapers? Christmas trees? Rockets? Or the image of Nebuchadnezzar? Knows what a tower represents. It is man's projected desire to go upward, pictured by a symbol of his own creative abilities in the physical realm of reproduction. That's what it is. And this tower, whose top may reach into heaven. They're trying to get to heaven. And the tower is a standard phallic symbol to represent man as his own creator by regeneration. That's what a tower represents. The ambition of one world global family is to do exactly what Satan said he wanted to do. Go to Isaiah 14 and we'll close with this. Isaiah 14. These people in Genesis chapter 11 say the same thing Satan said. What is it? Whose top may reach unto heaven. Isaiah 14, look at verse 11. Isaiah 14, verse 11. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vials, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart. Now here's what he said. And God knew what was in his heart. I will ascend into heaven. That's exactly the reason why Nimrod and his people are building the Tower of Babel. To reach heaven. Satan said, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's Satan's goal. You know, he's still after that today. And he can't get there yet. He's hoping to try. He'll never make it. But he's gonna try to. And God says, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. You're looking to go to the sides of the north? You get to go to the sides of the pit instead. Now see, man always wants to go out of bounds. Man is always out of bounds. Space is out of bounds for mankind. We have no business being in outer space. None. Now, the big argument is whether man's really been on the moon or not. Who cares? They have no business being out there. God gave mankind the earth, not the heavens. But there's something about the heavens. There's something about outer space. There's something about that third heaven. Man wants to get there. You know what it is? It's satanic. That's exactly what Satan wants. But mankind wants to explore it. Why? It's the final frontier. It's a frontier that man cannot explore, and they want to so bad. And man wants control of it. but they can't control space. So, whose top may reach into heaven? Now, do you think it's possible to reach heaven? It's possible for us. We're saved. Now, I don't have to go to space to do that. But let me ask you another question. And I'm going to leave you with this. If God had to come down from heaven and stop it, makes you wonder if they could have achieved it. Think about that. If they could not achieve that goal, then God would have just let them do it, right? There's something there that it was very possible for them to achieve whatever it was. And it's a technology that we don't have today because we can't do it. And God's not worried about it. Not right now. Think about that this week. I'll give you something crazy next week. Amen? All right.